On January 10th, 2023, the NWS issued a slight risk for Day 3 for areas of Alabama, Georgia, and southern Tennessee. At the time, the tornado threat seemed minimal, and it was mainly driven by a wind threat at the time. On January 11th, the NWS issued a 2% tornado risk and a 15% wind threat, still a slight risk at the time. At the time, it was thought that the storms would take more of a linear mode without supercellular activity, and that means that there would only be a few brief tornadoes. On the morning of January 12th, the NWS upgraded the risk area to an enhanced risk, mainly for eastern Alabama and Georgia. The reason for this upgrade in the forecast was due to the models starting to show a non-linear mode and more of an embedded supercell line that would come through the area, which would lead to more tornadoes than previously thought. Still, the threat for strong tornadoes was not presented at this time. At the night before, around 9 o'clock at night, a brief tornado occurred near Joppa, Kentucky. This caused EF1 damage. Other than some minor tree damage, it also managed to do minor damage to a couple of homes as it crossed the Ohio River. Luckily, there was no injuries associated with this tornado. Another long-tracked EF1 tornado passed near Moulton and Decatur in Alabama in the early morning hours of 3 a.m. Before crossing Sledge Creek, it managed to do EF1 damage to a few outbuildings and trees. No injuries happened in this location. As the tornado entered Moulton, Alabama, it did EF0 damage to a few buildings in town, mainly an apartment building just as it exited town. After paralleling Highway 20, it moved to the north side of Decatur, Alabama, doing EF1 damage to multiple mobile homes and causing an injury at a recycling factory on Highway 20. After crossing Wheeler Lake, it did EF0 to EF1 damage for a few more miles before finally dissipating north of Garrett Road. Overall, this tornado tracked 30 miles, reached a maximum width of 325 yards, and was on the ground from 3:09 a.m. to 3:45 a.m. The first strong tornado of the day occurred at 9 o'clock in the morning, south of Haleyville, and did EF2 damage after crossing right Fort Clear Creek. The worst of the damage occurred when two well-constructed chicken coops were completely leveled, giving it an EF2 rating with 125 mile-per-hour winds. The tornado was on the ground for roughly 13 minutes, tracking 9 miles and reaching a final peak width of 425 yards. Another EF2 tornado went north of Emil and caused EF2 damage just east of the town. This ended up being the first tornado I tracked of the day on radar. As you can see, the velocity scans here, decently impressive with a decent-sized debris ball. This tornado did EF1 damage as it passed through Emil, ripping the roofs off of many outbuildings and damaging the roofs on houses. As it passed Hamner, it did EF2 damage to a house and a few outbuildings. It would manage to do EF1 tree damage for the rest of its life before finally dissipating. In total, this tornado was on the ground for 16 minutes, tracking 13 miles, as well as reaching a maximum width of 440 yards with peak winds of 120 miles per hour. Around this time, the National Weather Service released another update to the forecast, now including a 10% risk for tornadoes, acknowledging the possibility for strong tornadoes in the future. Most of the other tornadoes I will be covering in this video are going to be from the Selma supercell, which produced several EF2s and 2 EF3s. The first tornado produced by the Selma supercell was the Selma tornado, which reached EF2 intensity as it went through the center of Selma. This tornado had a wide debris ball at the time just before it impacted Selma, with a hook echo visible embedded within the rain of the supercell. Soon after forming, the tornado already started to do EF1 damage to multiple mobile homes, shifting some off their block foundations. Tornado then started doing EF2 damage after crossing Landline Road, destroying multiple homes. After crossing into the western outskirts of Selma, it continued to do EF2 damage to multiple well-built homes. It also completely collapsed a church along Cooper Drive, approaching Selma. As the tornado went through Selma, it destroyed multiple homes and businesses, causing 2 injuries. Multiple weak foundation homes were completely collapsed, and many buildings lost their roofs and some of their exterior walls. After hitting Selma, the tornado continued to weaken until it dissipated. In total, this tornado caused 2 injuries, trekked for 23 miles and 27 minutes, reaching a maximum width of 950 yards and having peak winds of 130 miles per hour. Another tornado formed south of the Selma tornado from a different supercell that hit Mount Vernon. The supercell that produced the Mount Vernon tornado was incredibly impressive at the time, with a full rotationary couplet and a impressive hook. The tornado produced by the Mount Vernon supercell was very brief, only lasting a few minutes. The supercell seemed to have trouble dropping tornadoes throughout the night until it was eventually absorbed into the line later in the evening. Back to the Selma supercell, we will now cover the EF3 that trekked 82 miles in Alabama. After a brief cycle period, the tornado formed and immediately gained EF3 status after only a few minutes on the ground. Other than an impressive velocity couplet, it also showed an equally impressive hook echo where you can actually see the rain wrapping around it. Soon after, a tornado emergency was issued for this tornado, the first of the year. The hook continued to look more and more impressive as the storm moved on. The debris ball was also pretty large, spanning at around 2 miles wide. The tornado continued to look even more impressive, with the hook echo now showing even more of this hurricane-like structure, as you could still see intense rain wrapping. Here it was estimated where its velocities reached its peak strength, as you can see the swirling motion in the velocity couplet, and a tiny notch where the winds are the most intense. Due to this, another tornado emergency was issued to expand on this one, making 2 tornado emergencies issued so far this year. At this time, a unique sounding was issued from the NWS stating this tornado, showing that an intense tornado was ongoing at the time, halfway through its track. This tornado maintained its intensity for a very long time at the beginning of its track, as you could see by the radar loop here. You could see how this maintained incredible intensity for most of its early life. A constant large debris ball was visible in the correlation coefficient for most of this tornado's life as well. And looking at the radar loop, you could see that this supercell, even though it was absorbed into the line, still was able to keep the tornado on the ground. Unfortunately, this tornado tracked through multiple mobile homes at peak intensity, destroying many. It threw a pickup truck around 120 yards, which created a crater on landing, and it threw a mobile home 250 yards, where its frame landed in a field. Other than that, multiple other cars and trucks were thrown. One had its cab ripped from its bed. Unfortunately, 7 fatalities occurred from this tornado, mainly in the area where all the mobile homes were. The tornado then did EF3 damage to a 2-story home, and then managed to snap hundreds of trees, and then managed to also level a stick-built home, and this would be the last bit of EF3 damage the tornado would do. It continued to briefly strengthen and weaken to EF2, EF1, and EF0 damage until it eventually dissipated after an 83 to 82 mile long path. The damage was actually so severe from this tornado, the NWS considered giving it a higher rating, but lacked the proper damage indicators to give it anything higher than a mid-range EF3, but did mention in the damage survey that a higher rating was possible. This tornado lasted a total of an hour and 28 minutes, tracking 82 miles, causing 7 fatalities, 16 injuries, and growing to a peak width of 1,500 yards with estimated peak winds of at least 150 miles per hour. Despite the supercell being completely absorbed into the line, it still continued to produce multiple strong and one intense tornado during its lifetime, becoming an absolute monster of an embedded supercell. The mesocyclone on this supercell grew so big that it produced 3 tornadoes simultaneously near Griffin, Georgia. One tornado reached EF3 status on the north side of Griffin and was thought to have been at least 2 miles wide, but later studies revealed that there was an area of inflow, and the width has not been finalized as of the making of this video. The inflow to the supercell was generally so powerful that it actually proceeded to cause tornadic damage by itself. After the Griffin tornado, the supercell would eventually produce only a few more tornadoes before it would finally dissipate after its extremely long tracked life. Unfortunately, an 8th fatality occurred in Georgia when a separate tornado that came after the Griffin tornado caused a fatality. There isn't that much damage photos available for this tornado, but there is some descriptions of some of the damage, such as when the satellite tornado did absorb into the main tornado, it did end up causing a brief spout of EF3 damage in a subdivision in Griffin. The totals for this outbreak are 0 EFUs, 7 EF0s, 19 EF1s, 10 EF2s, and 2 EF3s. Total of 38 tornadoes, which unfortunately caused 8 fatalities, 1 non-tornadic, and 53 plus injuries. This outbreak did end up surprising many in these areas of Alabama, and they are still recovering from this, unfortunately. As of recording this video, tomorrow, on Tuesday the 25th, another system is expected to move through that will bring possibly strong tornadoes again to southern portions of Alabama and Louisiana. Anyways, it's gonna do it for this video. Hope you liked it, and I'm gonna leave you off with the most impressive supercell I've seen from this event, and it's probably in general the top 10 most impressive supercells I've ever seen, maybe even the top 5. Anyways, if you liked the video, I guess you liked the video, and subscribe if you want. Anyways, bye.